Welcome to Inside Infrastructure. This is a podcast brought to you by the American Public Works Association, the San Diego and Imperial Valley chapter. The purpose of this podcast is to inform, educate, and entertain, to have a good time talking about infrastructure, stories about improvements done to our public works and infrastructure throughout our communities that improved our lives in that. My name is James Nagelvoort. I'm a professional civil engineer that has been in this business for over 35 years. I've worked both in private and public, and I love infrastructure. Joining me here today is my co-host, Ben.
Thank you, James. My name is Benjamin Valdez. I'm the APWA Young Professional Chair. Today, we're going to be looking at why bridges cost so much and why they take so long to get built. We have a wonderful guest, Marnell Gibson, coming on today, and I hope you guys enjoy today's episode.
The goals of the podcast is learn and have fun.
That's right.
We're getting to have fun down. Well, welcome everybody. So welcome our viewers. We have, as we said, we have an amazing guest joining us today. Her name is Marnell Gibson. We've known each other for a number of years in that. A little bit of background on Marnell Gibson before I kick it over to Ben for the tough questions. Marnell has been in the business, working both private and public for over 30 years. She's a professional engineer and a well-educated engineer. She is a graduate of my alumni, San Diego State University. So go Aztecs, Marnell.
Yay.
And that she worked at the city. She has worked at the city of San Diego for a number of years. She held many positions. In the last position she was there, she was the assistant director and also the city engineer. She, for record, was the first female city engineer for the city of San Diego. Also, she has been the public works director for the city of Burbank, and also the public works director for the city of Hermosa Beach. Any more in your background, Marnell?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So she knows a lot about the subject we're going to talk about, and we really, really thank you for being here. With that, I'm going to turn it on over to my wonderful guest, my host, Ben.
Awesome. Thank you. And Marnell, thank you for joining the show today. We really appreciate it. And before we start talking about some of the projects that you've worked on and some of the things that you've done, I'm just a little personally curious, what got you into public works to begin with? I know it's a little bit of a different industry. What kind of is your passion for it, and why did you end up going down this route?
Well, Ben and James, thank you for having me here. I do love infrastructure, as weird as that sounds. Perhaps a product of my environment. My father was a civil engineer. My brother is one as well. When I was a kid, when we would take road trips, we would stop and look at stuff. And one of those things...
You're a nerd, Marnell.
I know, I am a nerd. One of those things that was really exciting were bridges. And I was always fascinated by how they looked, how they stood up, how they moved vehicles from point A to point B. So those were kind of the special ones. We looked at a lot of other stuff, and of course I still do today, but that's kind of how I got into it. And I loved math more than I loved writing. Didn't realize it at the time in school that I would do more writing than math, but that's kind of how I got into the whole infrastructure career. And I started in the private sector, worked on a variety of projects, and then made my way over to the public sector. And my passion for that became just doing stuff for the general public. I really enjoyed seeing those products, going through the challenges, as James used to always say, do the sausage making behind the scenes, and then turn out a product that the citizens use every day, and they don't even realize it. So that's kind of my story of how I got to my career.
It's funny. It's actually kind of similar for me. My dad, he's an inspector. He's been in this line of work my entire life. And every time we would go, not on road trips, but anywhere around town kind of thing, he'd always stop. And if there was a project going on, he would complain about, the signage not being set up right, or being like, oh, that's Jimmy's project. Let me give him a call. And we'd stop. So all of our little trips, even just across town, ended up getting padded by like 10 to 15 minutes because he'd stop to say hi to someone. And now, here I am in the industry, and I do the same thing with my 2-year-old. So I guess I kind of became him a little bit.
Yes.
So Ben, we have future engineers coming up?
Yeah. It's going to be a little bit more. He's still in potty training, but we'll push him in that direction.
So do we want to transition to bridges now?
Yeah. I know that you've worked on quite a few different bridges throughout your career. Are there a few of them that kind of stand out to you as some highlighted projects that you kind of want to talk a little bit more about?
Yeah, so interesting. Bridges are kind of a rare creature in the industry and requires some specialties to work on them. So I really actually never dreamed that I would ever work on a bridge or ever be involved with one. And my first involvement was actually a bridge up in Black Mountain Ranch that was constructed as part of the development. I was at the materials test lab, and we would run the testing to make sure that the concrete was up to strength. And so that was my first, toe in the water. And then as my career moved along, I went into the design side of it and got involved in projects like the West Mission Bay Drive Bridge project, the Genesee Avenue project, the Georgia Street Bridge project. They all had very unique components to them. Mm-hmm. They're all large and very difficult projects to manage. Whenever you come up with a bridge project, especially it's large, they're expensive. You have to keep the transportation component moving. So sometimes there will even be a false bridge that is temporarily constructed in order to keep the traffic moving. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately you'll get that final piece done, the project completed, false bridge goes away. So there's a lot of nuances with it. Oftentimes they are a connector to get people in area A over to the place in area B. Mm-hmm. Super important for emergency vehicles. And then I think the other component that has really become key to it is having a pedestrian and bike paths affiliated with it. So it's evolved over time. And all of those bridges came at a time post the earthquakes that we experienced both in Northridge as well as up in the Bay Area, where they had significant structures collapse from the seismic events. So then that started modifying the requirements or the codes and what needed to be done. So a lot of cities across the nation started looking at, are these bridges structurally sound now? Do they need to be upgraded? Can they be upgraded? Do they need to be replaced? Well, none of those are cheap options. Yeah. And so you look to kind of find ways to seed it, start it, look at it, start analyzing it. You don't have a whole lot of information at the beginning, but you start kind of growing this project, knowing that it's going to be expensive and it's going to take time to find that funding for completion of that project. And so they take a long time.
Yeah.
Comment I got, so to show you how much of a nerd I am, and this is for the general public that's out there, and that if you ever drive in California, Southern California, up and down, and you look at bridges, you'll see the columns are big and beefy. And if you ever take a road trip, you start driving to other states that are not, by the way, the bridges are fine, but they're not in the seismic zone, you start to realize how narrow those columns become in that. And so probably I might be the only person on the planet that notices that, but I always notice that when we go on a road trip. Enjoy it. That's the nerd that's inside me. The second thing is, Ben and I were having a discussion before you came in and wanted to get into a little bit to help the public understand why are bridges or significant infrastructure projects, the length of time it takes to do them, and also the expense. And you touched on one element to go into that, and that is often when you build a bridge to existing facilities, you're building a temporary bridge in order to continue to provide service, to then take down the old bridge, to then build the final bridge. And so you're actually building two bridges,
right? Plus
the demo side of that.
Right.
I know if you can dive in a little bit more about, what are some of the components that make it long and expensive?
Sure. So typically, what does a bridge span? a waterway or a canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Both environmentally sensitive areas. So there's a lot of involvement in assessing the impacts that you would have from those heavy columns, those thick columns, driving into those environmental areas. So, for example, if you're crossing a waterway, those old columns may need to go deeper than the original columns did. So you're now having you could have a bigger footprint impact. We have, I would say today, more awareness of environmentally sensitive flora, fauna, animals, everything that might be within that waterway or canyon. And there's a strong advocacy for maintaining pristine environments in their pre-development conditions. And so what oftentimes can happen is that there's a process that you need to go through. So you have to assess that, but you don't have a whole lot of information still on the design. You don't know exactly what you're going to do or what those impacts are going to be, but you still need to figure out, okay, how much damage am I doing to this environment from the construction? And then if there are some impacts, then there may be mitigation that you have to do that might not even be in that area. So there may be mitigation that is, miles away, but there's a project or an area that is being overhauled and redeveloped back to its natural conditions. And so you have to find that offsetting mitigation, which is, can be challenging to find either a 1-for-1, it can be a 10-for-1 impact ratio. So those are all costs and time that happens with that. And then your biggest cost component is definitely construction. So to line up all of those dollars to hit in those years that you need it, because usually it's a multi-year construction, if it's this large of a project, takes a lot of work. So you may be using some local funding, some state funding, some federal funding, and there's a lot of competition for that. So you look at that, and you have to, as an agency or an organization, public agency, you have to move your project forward as best you can with the funding that you can obtain in order to tee it up to be ready to utilize those funds if and when they become available. So you may sit for a long time.
So a lot of the time you're waiting for those funds to even come in. So you want to do a bridge, you want to do this project. So fingers, hopefully it doesn't, but if the big one were to hit, that bridge would stand up.
Correct.
But then you still have to wait for all those different funding sources to funnel in.
Right.
And before that, you have to do all the environmental ahead of time. So before you can even break ground on the project, or even, is it early design when you start doing that? Or how much of that is kind of part of the process when you're looking at it?
You get your environmental process cleared that says you can do the project or not, because it can get
shut down.
It can get shut down, and we did have one of those. But then you start working into your preliminary design. So for bridges, a little bit unique because you do need to work through a portion of design to figure out what the impacts are for the environmental side of it. But then once you get going, then you're going to work on your design. As you make progress through your design, then you're starting to really see, when will I be ready for those construction dollars? So it can take 10 years, 20 years. I know that the city of San Diego has had projects on the books for decades, and they just cannot get the priority, I would say, and that comes from a number of different
and possibly
perspectives.
Probably one thing to point out is that for bridge financing, most of the money, and I think this is true for every city across the country, comes from the federal government.
That is correct. That is correct.
So all of your local cities that are responsible for bridges are competing with each other for those federal dollars to come on in.
Right.
I don't know of a single city that collects a tax or fee to replace their bridges.
The only thing I could think of is if they had a toll bridge.
That would be perfect. That would be the only exception.
Right. Yeah. And so then they would utilize that money. The Coronado Bridge was a toll bridge. And once it had paid for itself, there's now no longer a toll.
To our guests watching out there and viewing this, and that Marnell Gibson is too young to know that. I don't know how she knows that.
But the other interesting thing is that for our state, Caltrans, California Department of Transportation, is the one that manages those federal dollars, and they also oversee bridges. So they're involved in the ongoing assessments of every bridge in California. And then they basically are the ones that kind of oversee, you work with them. Obviously, there are regions for California as well with certain allotments. So we've had a lot of success in strategizing different components where there may be a freeway involved, which would be Caltrans jurisdiction, and then the local agency may have the bridge that crosses the freeway or intersects. There are on-ramps, off-ramps that connect. So you look at how those partnerships work out and where one agency's responsibility starts and stops, and the other one picks up. So I'll give you an example. Genesee Avenue Widening Bridge was a bridge that was on the books for a long time for the city of San Diego. And so that is on Interstate 5 corridor. And very popular area. It's up by UCSD, and then you've got a lot of the tech companies, bio companies in that area, hospital, golf course, all that stuff, right? So what was happening is there was backup on the freeway. So Caltrans initiated a project to start widening the freeway. And, well, we had a bridge that
got in the way of that.
And so it was kind of like pennies from heaven, I'll say. We lined up, and Caltrans was able to help support us in getting funding for that project to basically widen that bridge at the same time as Interstate 5 was getting widened. And so it was a great win-win situation. I think that really it fast-tracked our project. Like, we were, whoa.
Because you got that funding.
We got that funding. It was like, hurry up, get that design done. So it was like, boom, boom, boom. But it was a great partnership, I think, that turned into a very successful project and added a stretch of bike path, because that actually happened to be a section where people would ride their bicycles on the freeway.
Oh, wow.
Because there was no alternative route. And so if you look over on the west side of Interstate 5, you will see a lit bicycle path on that side that used to not exist. So it had a lot of, I think, pros that came out of a situation that we actually hadn't really anticipated coming up. So that one happened really fast.
Nice. And for that one in particular, what would you say are some of the risks that the general public might not even think about with that kind of project that you can experience on the back end?
So I would say if it didn't line up, what would happen with that I-5 widening corridor? You couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it. So I think that that's something that you don't necessarily see all the time. We had another interesting with the one with the Georgia Street Bridge, which is a historical bridge over in the Hillcrest area. And that one is really unique, very old bridge. And the retaining walls on either side. So if you look at it, the trolley actually used to go underneath that bridge. Yeah. And we needed to replace the walls and work on the bridge as well. It was old. And
so was that more of like a restoration, or? It
was a restoration, and it turned into, so it was historical too, which was super interesting. I dappled in that project a little bit, but what we needed to do was lower the road because it's an arch underneath of it. And the side clearances...
That would be the road under the bridge.
The road underneath the bridge. The side clearances were marginal. So if you had a semi-truck go through there, it might not work out so well. So really what we needed to do was lower the bridge, which of course then, now you have retaining walls on each side, which actually are the supports for that bridge, need to be lowered and redone as well. And then that turned into a water main, then was too shallow. So it also needed to be lowered in order to lower that road so we could do the retaining walls. So those would be, that's a great example of something that the public wouldn't necessarily see all the complications involved with that.
Great transition, because I wanted you to talk about this, and that is that when you're replacing bridges, a lot of people don't know this, but within the bridges, there are open cells, and you have utilities running through. They're water mains. So when you take down a bridge and you have to build a temporary bridge to maintain vehicle service, you might run into the fact you also are taking down the water main, transmission main, and you have to replace that to be able to provide service. So that's how complicated it gets. There could be electrical lines, gas lines, even sewer, drainage that goes with that.
Right, through the bridge, on the bridge, underneath the bridge, all of those things. So you've also got to look at every utility that might be utilizing. Bridge space becomes a premium.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's something a lot of people don't think about. They just think it's connecting people from one end to another, not thinking about the water, the electrical, all those kind of hidden things that when they go out, they notice it really quickly.
Right.
But, don't necessarily think about it when they're saying, hey, I just want an extra lane on this bridge so I can get home a little bit quicker.
Right. And, the inconveniences that are presented when you do any type of a roadway project, a bridge, definitely substantial, but even a roadway widening is how do you keep the traffic flowing? How do you keep the emergency vehicle access open and available? Oftentimes you can't detour it. So many years ago, I was looking at, it was actually a roadway project, and a small area, and there were maybe some things not done exactly right, but we had some constituents who were upset about what was going on during construction. And I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, it's kind of like when you're in the right of way, which can be, sidewalk to sidewalk, but you're like transportation corridor. It's kind of like remodeling your own house, and then you decide, oh, I'm going to live in it while I remodel it. And then you also have some relatives that need to move in while you're remodeling it, and you've got to keep everybody happy and everything working and stay on a budget. And so that personal aspect, I think, you see all of this stuff in your home and how you maintain it. When do you replace your roof? You have a 30-year-old roof. Are you going to replace it at 30 years? Are you going to replace it at 28 years? Are you going to replace it at take a chance at 35, maybe 40.
Wait for something to break and then try and fix it.
Right. Are you up there looking at it?
Yeah.
To figure, have you gotten a leak? Like, there's a lot of decision making that goes into that just on your own personal level. And that happens on public infrastructure as well. It's a timing thing, but you got to also find the funding and kind of advocate for that. A lot of different funding sources, again, different colors of money, different restrictions on how you can use it and such. So there might be timing involved with it. You may have a grant that has an expiration on it. Well, if you're not ready to go and use those funds in that duration, you could lose that grant and then you're in trouble. So that there's a lot of moving parts for a lot of projects. I know we're just kind of focusing on bridges today, but there's a lot going on continuously behind the scenes to make that project happen.
So complicated.
Very complicated, but kind of fun too, right? Like it's a lot of challenge, a lot of non-technical hurdles to also clear.
So maybe transition to that. So obviously, there's no way. I'm gonna use your analogy that I love: remodeling one's house. And you and I used to joke sometimes that when you in our profession to repair a city, how much easier it would be if we could allow everybody to leave the city for like 3 years, let us repair it, and then come back, which is obviously not possible. But on projects like this of this scale, you're impacting the public. You're building something that they need, that's necessary, but they have to live through that. And it's like the homeowners, like the people living in the house. What are some of the things that have gone well for you that others should do on projects in terms of communicating to the public to mitigate, minimize impacts? And what are maybe, if you could, are there any horror stories? You don't have
horror
to go there.
stories. Well, I think that the key probably to everything in life is communication, right? Doing what you can to prepare people for this ahead of time, but you can't reach everybody. A lot of times the information isn't really important until it physically impacts you, right? So I will say that the successful projects have, especially out on site, they have a multitude of ways to communicate things, whether that be out to community groups and getting information out to council members to help share that information and prep people who are in the area regularly. But the people that are transitioning, either they're visitors or they're just going there for a day, that's a little more difficult. And for those aspects, I know we have a lot of apps now that help out, but even on some wayfinding things, that doesn't get communicated. So you get in the jam, right? But one of my pet peeves has always been construction signing. And it drives me nuts when it's not accurate. So
you're talking like the detours, the signage, that kind of stuff.
Yes. And they'll say, construction ahead, be prepared to stop. And then you come up and there's nothing. There's nothing going on. And so those are the ones that where there's a lot of attention to detail on that, and it's continually monitored. Are the ones that I think are a little bit better. So you know where you're going, you know where you detoured to, you know how to get back to where you need to get to. And there's activity going on that's driving this.
In our line of work, there's two types of projects. There's those projects not in the right-of-way that are in a controlled site that you can isolate.
Right.
And then there's what you're talking about, the hard stuff, and that is doing construction in the right-of-way where the roads still need to be opened, pipelines need to be functioning.
Yes.
Fire hydrants need to be working, sewer needs to be working. So you're building through all that environment, but you can't shut down the systems. It still needs to be opened and going forward with that.
Right.
Yeah. Those that are out there that are watching that, It is a lot easier to build on a piece of property that's not open to the public, does not provide service, and you build a water treatment plant, a stadium, something like that.
Right.
The challenges are different and often simpler than they are when you work in the public right away.
Right. I think you have more control over that. So, for example, like a building, your unknown is below grade. That's your highest risk. And then once you get above grade, then everything above that is you have much more control over to get it completed.
Mm-hmm.
It's often in our line of work, I think you and I have talked about this before, and that is it's easier to go to a brand new development
Yes.
before the housing is built and you're building the roads and the bridges and the water mains and that. Much more difficult to come back to a housing development 30, 40 years later, everyone lives there, and make improvements to all those facilities.
Right. All right.
Challenging. I got a challenge for you.
All right.
I'm going to see if you can.
Uh-oh.
This is for the general public, and our goal in these podcasts are two things: entertainment and education, right? And so you went down this path a little bit. Big projects have large teams that have to come on board. Mm-hmm. No project's ever led or built by one person. That's
Correct.
Never happens. It's an organization, team of people that do it. Private and public comes together. And those teams change through the phases of the project.
Yes.
So the challenge for you is to help maybe educate the public. Maybe you can walk us through what are the typical phases of the project and then what are the teams that you're bringing together?
Sure. So the general phases are planning, design, and construction. So just high level. So planning is usually done by a group of planners where there's an initial assessment. Then that baton can get passed over to a design team. Then they'll work through the design, and then that gets advertised and awarded, typically to the lowest bidder for a construction contract. And then you have a contractor that takes over the lead for the construction. And then there's oversight by the city, others involved in that. And so the least amount of money is typically spent in planning.
And that would be like the environmental kind of stuff that we were talking about earlier, or is that before?
Correct. And it could just be like an initial assessment or, kind of scoping out the project. But it can very easily take the longest amount of time. Then you move to design. I'm going to say roughly, oftentimes about 30% of your total cost of your project. That also can take time because you may be looking for funding for construction. You may be working through permits. You may be working through some design issues. You may be working through real estate acquisition. There's a lot of different things that can happen for what the specifics for that project. And then once your design is completed, then you send it out for advertisement and take bids in and award to the contractor. And then you usually have windows. There could be restrictions for your construction as well. There could be environmental restrictions, like you can't do anything during the summertime because these birds are nesting. Maybe that would be spring. But you have times where you can't do things or you can't be in areas. So you may have to have breaks. It may be so busy on a transportation project that you have to do the work at night. It could also be the same for, say, a water or a sewer main. You need to do those when the demand on the system is lower so you can get in there and do the work and do the actual construction. And then deal with that as you work through it. But there could be a number of different nuances per project that
great job. This is so for the audience out there, this is a tough one to answer because there is no one single way to deliver a project. So Marnell's giving you the typical way, but there are multiple ways to deliver a project. All projects have a unique element to them. We're not. I always tell people we're not in the business of manufacturing the same car or phone or watch repetitively. But that's not this business. This business, the keys to the business is what usually your project. It has similarities to other projects, but it is unique in itself.
Right.
And then the other is that it has a beginning and an end, and you form a team. You bring them together to do the planning you talked about and that. And as you shared in that, the thing I think I would add is that the teams usually have a prime, the lead, but then they have a whole bunch of subs. So like in planning phase, they might have an environmental team, they might have financing, along with the engineering staff that's there.
Right.
Going through. I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you to be a little bit more complicated, a little more detail.
There's a variety of different ways to deliver that. So some can be done in-house. You have the expertise to do that in-house, and then sometimes you hire out consultants to do that work to help out and manage. And you said it has a beginning and an end. To me, interesting component of that is that for every project, especially in the linear projects, which would be, your pipelines, roadways, whatever, it's a piece of the puzzle. So there's never really an end to it. It's just one piece of that linear component.
So design construction, planning, design construction has beginning and end, but you're getting to maintaining, operating the system. It never ends.
Right. Your system is always always like turning over the next need. But in your preliminary planning phase, you'll have an assessment. You'll do a little bit of design so that the environmental assessment can be done. There could be a search for other utilities, like what you might come across, what permits might be needed, pass it over so that you get that clearance, to move that far enough along, you move that over to design. Design may have actually a component. So the environmental side could carry over to the design side to make sure that the project can actually move forward. But you'll have, so let's say if you hired a consultant to design a bridge, they are going to have a load of sub-consultants to do specifics for that project. It could be project specific, definitely, but you can have a variety of sub-consultants.
And then just so we have a good understanding of this, so the city would hire another company to design it. Right. And then that company would have other companies that they would kind of outsource some of that work to kind of help lift the load on their
Exactly.
end.
So it's a prime consultant. So they're the lead on the team. The city is managing that contract as well. And then that prime has an umbrella of subs others underneath them. So the team can be quite large, and then depending on who you might be collaborating, it might be another agency. So there may be other partners. The example I used with Caltrans, of how they're working and intertwining with that project. So then, and sometimes it can just be done in-house. And the city might hire some subs to help them with that in-house design. But then it could move. Then once that package moves on, then the contractor is the prime, and that contractor can have a lot of subcontractors involved doing specialty things, part of their work, whatever that might be.
They're the ones actually building the project, correct?
Correct. And then the city oversees that. So there can be a construction manager, inspectors, as you said, that the city will have eyes on it. But if it's a very large project that needs somebody out there constantly, bridge projects are a perfect example. The city will typically hire a consultant to do that as well, to do that construction management component of it. And then they'll work with whoever the inspector from the city is
They're like the eyes and ears for the city.
Correct.
Nice.
Correct. And managing the prime and making sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, because those projects can be super involved, a lot of stuff going on every single day.
Making sure the right materials are being used. So
Correct.
that way, if something does happen, the bridge will hold up.
Correct.
Nice.
That they're tested, that they're meeting all the criteria required go back to what the design team develops are construction documents. So plans and specifications. So it's a written document and then a visual of all of the requirements for that project. And you look at a set of those and, there can be volumes on the written side. So all those requirements are in there for a reason. And then you're looking at the plans. Eventually you want to make that 2D layout into a 3-dimensional usable product.
A lot of components going into it.
A lot of components,
So
yeah.
This brings us back to maybe you're helping us understand why does it take so long and why is it so expensive? And you're walking through the complexities and the people that work on it. So I absolutely appreciate that. To bring us to a closure, I want to go back to you again and a little bit about your motivations and the career that you've had and how you got into this and that. And could you tell us about maybe some of your most favorite projects and connect that to you, to why you love it so much? And one more part, everything that you've done and built is impacting and improving the lives of so many people out there. So can you talk about how it's making things better or how it did make things better for the communities you're involved with?
Sure. I always felt like if you did a project well, as you ultimately got it constructed, and then you really don't hear a whole lot about it anymore. So, in the day and age that we live in, when you turn on your faucet and water comes out, I think about that often. Because I don't know what I would do if I had to go find my own fresh source of water every day. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't flush my toilet every day, right? So those are the kind of the conveniences of today that I think that the public agencies provide regularly. Being able to drive to work or commute to work, or for your picnic or your enjoyment or whatever that might be, that those facilities are there and are used daily for the convenience as well as the enjoyment. I mean, we didn't even get into non-right-of-way projects, but your parks and golf courses and libraries, and then you look at your fire stations and your police stations, and there's a lot of stuff out there that citizens use every single day that they might not necessarily connect that with your public agency. So
that's what their tax dollars are going towards,
Right.
We just expect the toilet to flush,
Yes.
the water to be there,
Right.
without really thinking about all the costs and things that go into that to keep that going.
Exactly. And so that was my reward. That was always my reward of being in this career was getting those things done. I don't know if I have a favorite project.
It's like, tell me which is your favorite child.
Well, that's easy. I only have one. So.
Ben's got one, but for those that have more than one, it's hard to answer.
There are so many projects that, really, quite frankly, the ones that gave me the most reward, I would say, were the hardest ones. The ones where we ran into an issue, whether it was during design or more often during construction, because that emergency happens. But those are the ones I think that were the most rewarding because you're able to make it through it and then get the project completed. James, I don't have a favorite one. Like there's so many.
Your answer is beautiful.
You
don't have to have a favorite. Your answer is beautiful. You're getting the point across, and that is the work that you do and the work that you have done is important and does matter. And I agree with you that the sign of success. I always felt this sort of as past city engineer, is that the sign of success is kind of like a police chief. When there's no crime, it's good.
It's good
for those in public works and city engineer. When the infrastructure is good quality, and therefore the public is not being inconvenienced, we're doing a good job.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that from everyone, every single one of them, I mean, that's why I love sharing the stories, because I think there's a lot to learn. And like you said, James, no two projects are the same. It's not a manufacturing line. Every single one of them has unique components to it. But if you can take a lesson learned from one project and kind of translate that over for at least consideration for a similar type of project, I think that there's a lot of that occurs in the public works arena. And I think we're continually striving to find better ways to do it. And so you might be able to learn from somebody else's project that didn't go that, went haywire there for a little while. So, okay, we'll make sure to address that and take care of that. But especially with the advancements in technology as well, and integrating that into new ways of doing stuff that's less disruptive to the general public. I think that kind of ingenuity is always that problem solving is always going on with the public works side.
So I'm going to bring us to closure.
Okay.
It has been amazing, amazing career. I love your comments and that, so we really appreciate that. Any final thoughts? Any message for the public?
I would say that, if you have the opportunity and the interest, I'd go to a community meeting or go to a project meeting, learn about it. Even if you can get into it online, look at it. When you're driving down the road, kind of consider, wow, what would my life be like if I didn't have this?
Yeah.
And I think it's just kind of an awareness of what is around you. I think that people are always willing to share why something is. If you have an issue with a particular project, get in touch with the project manager. They'll tell you. They'll tell you what's going on. I think that it's just kind of a learning process to knowing that your tax dollars, and that was always something that was very, very important to me, was making sure that those tax dollars are spent as efficiently as possible to get those products out there. But I would say, just that, be curious. Do you see something that's of interest to you? Look into it a little more. It's so much easier today to get information online too, and get your questions answered. Like we said, there's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of organizations involved with those moving parts. Sometimes I hear things of, so-and-so did that, whatever, the city did this, but it's actually not their jurisdiction. So even kind of understanding just how your local government works, how your state government works, where your tax dollars go, how they're utilized and spent, and what benefit do you actually get out of that every single day. I think it's an important question to ask yourself, and maybe just be a little more curious.
Again, great answer, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I would only add one more thing.
Okay.
And they should watch Inside Infrastructure, our podcast, to learn as much.
Absolutely.
Marnell, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being with us. Ben, any final thoughts or final words?
No, Marnell, thank you so much for taking the time and explaining to us, why these projects take so long and cost so much. I think you provided a lot of great insight for it, and we really appreciate it.
All right. Well, look forward to the next one.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Thank you.